throughout the country, and it would go around our family. And I would be so appreciative if you could give me 10 copies autographed so that I can take them back as gifts.
Yeah, what do you...
Scotland, Hawaii, somebody who cared that much, but it was their life, and they saw themselves in that book. So,
what do you think about a lot of websites are coming up now, businesses like Upworthy, where a person will go and you'll start writing, they'll have web content or whatever you can write for them, and you get some money, and then as you get better and better, you move up the scale. Have you done any of those? Or
I haven't done them in a long time. I feel like the money that I get isn't fair.
Yeah.
And I am a little nervous about putting my words. All that we have are our words. And I lost a lot of content. A lot of people steal my content from websites. I had to send out letters from attorneys to get mine down. I had people putting my content on websites that I did not agree with
I've had the same thing happen. Yep.
philosophically. And so while I think that it's not a bad thing, it may not be the way I would direct my efforts as a new writer.
And that's kind of a nice thing with having a publisher, is they go after them. We say, I saw this, my book on this, are we, is that one of our outlets? And they're like, no. So you're not getting any money for your work, for one thing.
Well, and in so many cases, I also didn't get any credit.
Right.
So it wasn't like I would literally, I have the dog story, I have a bracelet story that have been published so often in compilations and on websites and valid places. I would have people who would just steal the story, they type it verbatim, and I would have to every single month type in my name, type in books, but I'd also have to type in key sentences.
See, as an independent, you
so
have to do
it would pop up.
Yeah.
But I also learned you have to do it even if you're not independent.
Well, we check and see.
Because I had a story from, I don't know if I'm allowed to say, I won't say the major publisher, that not only didn't catch it, but when I brought it to their attention, was not willing to pursue it. Because the market who had taken it was a bigger shark than they were. And they were like, well, at least exposure's exposure. And I said, no, my contract says that if you sell this on my behalf, then I get 50% of what you got. You got paid something. But they weren't willing to pursue this because it was not politically the best thing for them. So
other people probably took that under consideration. You have to.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about self-publishing? Like, where did you go to? Because there's many types of self-publishing, and what was the process for you?
It was a lot harder back in the day, because I'm 1998. So just the internet has just revolutionized. My internet, the internet was just starting. So it was a lot harder. There really wasn't print on demand. What I did is, once I made this little bargain with God that I would write this book, and I started doing my research, I found out I needed money.
Oh, yeah.
Which I didn't have. But I just kept saying, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So I just diligently wrote, I interviewed people, I made promises I didn't know if I could keep. And I thought, well, once I get content, I need an editor. Because I know a writer is not an editor. And my writing background was junk mail, radio commercials, PR. That is not the same kind of writing. And I joined a Christian writers group online. It was an email kind of loop. And I met a woman from Minnesota. And we had a lot in common. She was from Hawaii, but she had moved there, and she was a master editor, had worked for major outlets, and had some physical disabilities and could no longer work, but her mind. And she emailed me and she said, I think God wants me to edit your book. And what a blessing.
Yeah.
And then I found an artist whose husband had died of Huntington's, and 3 of her 4 kids had it. And I had an idea for a cover. And she said, I'll do your cover. And then I met a graphic artist who was touched by that disease and gifted me that. But the big thing, as I'm saying, I don't know how to pay for this, is I had a guy whose wife is in the story, and sadly she passed away before the book came out. And he said, Helen is so thrilled that she was in this book, and I want to order X amount for Christmas gifts. And I said, well, my plan is just to sell them and kind of pay for it that way and order a little bit at the time. And I don't know if it's going to be out by then. I explained to him how publishing was, and I said, there's not going to be any publisher who knows about or cares about Huntington's. It just ain't going to happen, okay? So he said, but that's just so wrong. We need this book. He said, I have Helen's life insurance policy, and we'd like to pay for this. And I said, no, that's not going to happen. You don't have any understanding how much this bill is going to be. What we came up with was a zero interest loan, and I would pay it back through sales. And if I couldn't pay it back, they would forgive it. And we got a document signed up. And I anticipated I would have this paid off in about a year, and we had it paid off in about 5 months.
Nice.
Excellent.
And I will always be so grateful, because I think I would have gotten the book out, but I don't think it would have been as easy. So with self-publishing, now
you don't really need a lot of money at all.
Well, what do you think?
I think it depends upon who your audience is and how far you're trying to go. I don't think any writer should ever edit their book. I think that a laborer is worthy of his or her work, and that means money. I don't think anybody should ever design their own cover. You're so close to it. There's that cost. Even if you do a print on demand, even if you do electronic only, there are still costs involved. It just depends upon where you're looking at. And one reason I made so much money off of this is because I did have this huge stock of books that I could sell.
Yeah.
And so I could lock into groups and work with.
Yeah, it sounds like self-publishing, you were able to find a niche population. A thing where the publishers, especially today, might overlook. I think that's profitable, but you know it, and you can focus on them. So you can self-publish, but still, you kind of need some capital still for self-publishing. It is cheaper, but I think pay for an editor,
Right.
pay for a graphic artist.
And it really depends upon why you're doing this and who you're trying to reach. Another book that I wrote that I brought, and this one is easily available on Amazon.com, and it's called You Can Market Your Book. And this is the book I didn't want to write. I turned it down 3 times. I had a publisher who came to me and said, your marketing knowledge is so great, and you've taught at so many dozens and dozens and dozens of conferences, and your workshops are always sell out. I want to put that in a book. And I said, I don't want to be the go-to girl for marketing. I want to write serious things. I just didn't want to only focus on that.
Yeah.
And so I turned him down a couple times. And finally, we came up with an agreement. And of course, I don't know, I guess I'm not a girl because I can't stand the color purple. You'll never see me wear purple. So I didn't design my cover. I don't, it's not the cover I would have designed. It is not the font I would have used. It is, but
you
it's.
don't get a lot of choice when you're.
But it sells very well. So it's called You Can Market Your Book. All the tools you need to sell your published book. And this started out as from a Christian publisher, but I will say we have sold to any and everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a real basic how-to. My philosophy on marketing is that marketing starts with the idea, not with the finished book.
Okay.
You weave marketing into every word, every cover, every person who writes a blurb with your picture. Everything needs to be woven in. If you write something and then you try to market afterward, it's like a patchwork. And we can tell it's not nearly as effective. And so what this book does is it takes the things that I did in this book, in my royalty books, because I've published with Random House, I have a lot of royalty books as well. I have 10 books total, and the majority are royalty. And I've made more on my own books than on the realty. I should say that. Because I had control and I knew the
Yeah.
market. But it takes everything that I've learned, but also what I've learned in copywriting and junk mail and PR.
Yeah.
And I've woven it into a toolkit.
Now,
So it's
how
a really fun
recent?
book.
How recent is that?
This book
'Cause
came.
I think stuff changes pretty often.
Things do
doesn't it?
change, but not marketing.
Okay.
Marketing does never change. So this one came out in 2003.
Okay.
So while the websites are either going to be updated or gone, the content is exactly the same. Content doesn't change. So we talk about how to come up with your idea, how to title, how to find people to endorse your book, how to create a speaking market, how to come up with ideas both for fiction and nonfiction. I'm going to be the first to say nonfiction's easier to market.
Yeah.
But there are nonfiction techniques that you can use to market your fiction work.
So what if you're not an expert in anything? Like you were an expert in.
Oh, but
Huntington.
you are. Everybody's an expert in something.